Rev up your engine. All right, today I'm going to talk about the lost art of supercharging a car. This is a 99 Buick. It came with the Supercharger. 24 years later, it's still running pretty good. Why don't they use superchargers on most modern cars? The serpentine drive belt spins the supercharger, and then it compresses air and puts more air in the engine. Gives more horsepower so they can go faster. But superchargers have one disadvantage versus a turbocharged system, and that's this. As you can see, it's belt driven, so it takes energy of the engine to run the supercharger, so it is not as efficient as a turbocharger. A turbocharger, on the other hand, uses exhaust gas to spin the turbine, and it rams more air in. That's energy that's already there, so you're not using up power. Yes, a turbocharged engine theoretically can get better gas mileage than a non-turbocharged engine, but, and this is a gigantic but, people who drive turbocharged cars and supercharged cars generally drive as crazy as I do on this Triumph motorcycle, and that negates all the benefits of, well, it's more efficient. I would have to say that at least 95% of my customers with supercharged and turbocharged vehicles get worse gas mileage because they drive faster. Turbochargers and superchargers actually are excellent for adding power. Realize at the end of World War II, some of the B-17 bombers, they actually had both turbochargers and superchargers. Power to pick all those bombs off of the runway. Luckily, you didn't have to pay for the gas for a B-17 bomber. In the olden days, this is a 99, a supercharged or turbocharged car had a big disadvantage of premium unleaded gas only. These older systems weren't as complex as a modern one. You can get a modern car, Mustang with a 4-cylinder EcoBoost turbo engine, it will lose maybe 45 horsepower if you put in regular instead of premium. It'll run okay though because the computer controls it all. But in an old thing like this, a 99 Buick, it is not sophisticated enough. Yes, it is fuel injected, but still, you gotta really run them with premium if you want them to run correctly. If you gotta buy premium gas, there goes your savings on better gas mileage. You're gonna pay so much more for the premium versus the regular. It's not a thing that's done for economy. It's a false idea of economy. The modern cars, yeah, you can run them on regular gas. They won't have as much horsepower. But these old ones, you gotta run them on premium. Now, as an example of not driving like a lunatic, he drove from Chicago to Tennessee and he got 25.8 miles per gallon, which is good. Let's say you got a regular car and you wanna get power to it. The easiest way to get a lot extra power is a turbocharger or supercharger. But you can't beat a supercharger because they're a lot cheaper to install. They bolt on and stuff. If you have a turbocharger, you got to put a turbocharger, you got to modify the exhaust system. Now this 99 Buick V6 has 240 horsepower with a supercharger, and it's only got 195 without it. That is a big deal of difference. Guys are always asking me, Scotty, my car's a little slow. How can I add some horsepower to it? The only way you can really add horsepower is by putting on a supercharger, a turbocharger, or rebuild the engine, which costs a small fortune. So, people that do want more power, really, the most economic thing is to put a supercharger on it. And there's lots of kits for vehicles that are fun to drive but underpowered. Take Mazda Miata. There's a billion supercharger kits out there because they're fun little cars, but they're kind of underpowered. You put a supercharger, you get a lot more power. And this thing, with the regular engine, it's a Buick Regal, 195 horsepower. It gets you around, but with a supercharger on it, it's another story. I'll show you. It's an old car. Let's see if it still works. But now it's freezing cold. It's a Buick Regal, so it's a pretty luxurious car for its day. Nothing compared to the new ones, but it still rides pretty good. It's a very smooth car. Got plenty of room in the back for people. An older Buick doesn't handle like a dream. I mean, it's an old style American car. It's not a racing car by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still got a pretty comfortable ride, even though it's 24 years old. And the brakes, hey, they stop it fine enough. As you can see, it's still got, you can set it up for performance shift like he has. No one's coming, so we'll get out to our little drag strip here. Perfectly fine on twisty roads. Now, you can't overdo it. It is a 99 Buick. It's not a race car. It doesn't have the greatest steering suspension in the world. But as we come to our little drag strip here, we'll stop here and we'll floor it when this guy gets by us. It burns out. That supercharger, it gives it so much more power. You don't really hear it whining. Now, he did change some bearings in the front of it a while back. They did start to wear out. These things will rattle as they age. But you can take them apart and rebuild the bad bearings. It's something that's totally doable. He did it himself. So it's still got that good GM air conditioning. Back in the day, they made really good air conditioning systems. And of course, with the Supercharger, when you need to pass somebody, you get a lot more zip when you're taking off than you do with the conventional engine that only has 195 horsepower. But of course, since they're all stuck with EP regulations and how much gas mileage a car has to get, on paper, a turbocharged car gets better gas mileage than a supercharged car in the testing. So you're not going to see too many supercharged cars. Just supercars will have it. They'll put them on Mustangs to get more horsepower. Guys that really want to get some extra oomph when they really don't care that much about gas mileage will stick a supercharger. But conventional production vehicles, they're all going to be turbocharged because on paper they get better gas mileage, so the manufacturers get brownie points for that crap. So but if you're gonna put a supercharger in a car, it has to be hooked up to a good engine. This is a GM V6 3800, one of the best engines they ever made, really. Combination of longevity and a reasonable amount of power. You supercharge a strong engine, it can still last quite some time. If you got some old clunker and you're going to throw a supercharger on it, you'll probably blow the engine. Or if you have an engine that can't take it. Some engines are notoriously well made, and if they are, no problem putting a supercharger on. Don't just think, oh, I'll bolt the supercharger on and away I go. Some vehicles, they're on the edge of as far as they can go. You add a supercharger on it, you're going to destroy the engine in a short period of time. It has to be put on a good engine. You can't just bolt one on any old engine. You need a solid engine that can take the boost, and then you'll get a lot more power. And the real advantage is, hey, you can still get decent gas mileage when you're just cruising along. If you remember the old Mad Max movies, okay, he's in his police interceptor with the big V8 in it, right? And his supercharger, he turned it on, he turned the switch on, it would engage and blow when he wanted. And when he wanted to get better gas mileage, because there wasn't any gas around, he turned it off to try to get as far as he possibly could. If you want to have one on, but you also know why you're not going to see too many cars with them, because it doesn't meet with the EPA gas mileage specs. They're all going to be turbos. They're not going to be putting too many of these on. They work perfectly fine, but they don't go with their BS of better gas mileage, which of course, unless you drive like a turtle, it won't. When they test them on dynos and stuff, they're not racing them all over the place. They're running them at one speed, another speed, but they're not straining the motors, which of course would get worse gas mileage. And here, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. The engine still runs good, doesn't burn oil. It is 24 years old, and it's still going strong. Mind you, yeah, you got to put a bearing in there, not that big of a deal. You're not going to see too many supercharged cars around, except for supercars and stuff, and then the sky's the limit, the technology they put in them, and they all get horrible gas mileage anyway. And here's some bonus questions and answers. The Weldy says, my heater car's blown already? Really? I got a 2017 Nissan Frontier with a V6. 5.5 years, and then my heater car blew. Isn't that premature for it to blow? Anyway, I traded away for a Tacoma, and I'm happy with it. For most cars, that'd be premature, you know, 5.5-year-old car, but it's a Nissan. They make them like crap. So I tell people, Nissans, when they were Datsuns were great, then they changed the name to Nissan, but around the year 2000, Renault bought the company, and it started to go, and yeah, they have crappy heater cores. Chrysler had the same problem. A lot of their heater cores leaked prematurely. It got bought out by Fiat. Everything got cheap. Things got made cheaper. They'd find out, hey, we can make these things cheaper. Aluminum's cheaper than copper. Well, aluminum corrodes faster than copper, so a lot of them just would start leaking at an early age. And at Nissans, they're notorious for that. It's just they make them too cheap. And that's what happens when you make something cheap. And when it's inside the dash, you got to take it all apart. It's a royal pain in the butt to change out. You know, they keep charging more for the cars, and they keep making them cheaper. It's not fair for us, you know. It'd be one thing if they made them better. Yeah, okay, I'll pay more. They make them better. But they're making them cheaper, and they're charging more for them. So it's a raw deal. You made a smart move. You got rid of it. Take my advice. Never buy another Nissan, and you'll probably be a lot happier that way. Birdsland says, how long will my $200 car last me? I recently got an 06 Chevy Impala. Should I baby it? How long will it last? It wasn't a wreck before I bought it. All I did was put a new thermostat, and it runs. Every once in a while, first gear shifts hard, but I baby it till it goes in second, that's okay. How long do you think it'll last? Okay, well, obviously it's been wrecked. The reason that there's numbers painted on it is because the parts came from a junkyard. The junkyards always put numbers on the parts. They came from a junkyard, so it was wrecked. The transmission jerks first to second when you baby it. The transmission's the first thing to go out on it now. It has 121,000 miles on it now. Let's face it, GM doesn't make such great cars. It's lasting, you only paid 200 bucks. Baby it, don't put a lot of money into it, because when the tranny goes out, that's 3 to 5 grand to fix it. Then you would just junk the thing. So basically, baby it, change the oil and filter, don't race around. You never know how long the thing's gonna last. Let's face it, you only paid 200 bucks for it. Most car rental places are charging 200 bucks a day. Baby it, keep your fingers crossed, you don't know. See how long the thing lasts. But when a tranny does go out, don't put any money in it, just junk it then. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.